There was once an empress who was praised for her unparalleled beauty. She, Wanrong, was the last empress of Manchukuo. Her life ended in a prison cell as she kept screaming in agony, covered in her own feces and urine. I want to meet him. The man whose name she kept calling supposedly kept controlling Manchukuo from the shadows. The Emperor of Darkness. Back again on this channel. In this video, the manga that we will discuss is titled Manchuria Opium Squad. Maybe some of you have read this manga, but those who haven't or have never heard of this manga, watch this video carefully until the end. Because this manga tells the story of a soldier for the Kwantung Army, Isamu becomes the breadwinner of his mother and two siblings. After his mother catches the plague, Isamu becomes a manufacturer of opium to afford medicine. This manga was published in 2020 and is still ongoing until now. This manga is an action, drama, mystery, and historical genre. If you are curious about this manga, watch this video until the end. Don't forget to subscribe. Manchuria, 1973. Tells about a family that just moved to Manchuria. The main character of this manga is Higata Isamu, 18 years old. He has a small family consisting of one mother and two siblings. His mother can't believe they conscripted her son who hasn't gotten in a single fight. Isamu believes that he will be fine, and he doesn't want his mother to worry. There, he feels like living in hell. One of the superior officers named Kondu Hajime who trains Isamu and other soldiers hard. One of the cruelties experienced in the military is, when he has cleaned the room, suddenly he is punched. He was punched just because one of the stacks of clothes aren't lined up properly. His days there are like living in hell. One day, he saw a new plant growing, then he opened a book that was about plants. Isamu really likes plants, he knows a lot about plants. The plant he saw that day was a soybean. He also knew that the land in Manchuria was very fertile. The fertile soil of Manchuria is rich with minerals, so it's a very good place to cultivate soybeans. In a few months, the shell will swell, and they'll become edamame. Then you must dry them for a month or two before they're edible. By that time, they may be at war. Isamu was registered in the Kwantung Army, he and the other troops were fighting China. Because of his hard training and the Kwantung Army was known to be quite strong, he and the others managed to win the war in Chaha easily. When he and the others were walking, suddenly he saw a little girl crying and asking for help because her brother was injured. Isamu could not just leave the little girl alone, he ran towards her. When he got there, it turned out that the injured brother was pointing a gun at Isamu. He fired the gun and hit his eye. A few days later, at Isamu's residence, his younger sister named Tetsu was seen gardening, while his younger brother was just busy playing with his pet pig. Not long after, Isamu approached Tetsu who was in trouble. Isamu, his injury was not too bad, if he can use his left eye, there's no problem. Not only Tetsu and Isamu who work hard to support their family, their mother is also working hard. Meanwhile in the Manchurian resettlement region. Volunteer Peasant Army. The huge agricultural training school was formed with the goal of providing the army with food supplies and improving the agriculture in those areas. It turned out that Isamu was assigned there because he could no longer fight on the front lines. One of the supervisors there said so. Jinnai Shigeru, who had worked there for a long time, thought it was not a big deal. The officers there thought Mr. Jinnai was a joke. They even made him a target practice. Again, he thought it was not a big deal. Isamu's family began to have trouble because he was no longer fighting on the front lines but was only a farmer. But his mother said otherwise. The mother felt happy the way they were. Isamu was forced to do military service because his father's sudden departure due to an illness. His mother felt very hurt because Isamu had a very good heart but was forced to do military service. But if he refused, he would be considered a traitor to the country. Seeing his mother who insisted on refusing Isamu to do military service, he had no other choice but to join because he did not want to lose his family. Isamu's knowledge of plants came in handy after he retired from the war. Since he lost an eye, his nose had become more sensitive. He could discern smells even in the darkness. Isamu could also distinguish by smell which plants were poisonous and which were not. After collecting some plants outside, he met his mother. But his mother did not look well. It turned out that she had contracted the plague. It is being said that 60,000 Manchurians died from the pneumonic plague. One of the officers wanted to throw Isamu's mother into the river because they were afraid that the plague would spread. They carried his mother. Suddenly Mr. Jinnai stopped them. It turned out that he was a former combat medic. He said that isolating the person is enough to stop the spread. He begged the officers not to throw Isamu's mother into the river and that he would take care of her. Isamu was very touched to see Mr. Jinnai. Isamu was very grateful to Mr. Jinnai for saving his family. But Mr. Jinnai could do nothing. At the final stage, the patient suffered from severe pneumonia and the lung cavity breaks. That became the pneumonic plague. In that case, she'd enter a cycle of vomiting blood, having fever and headache, and in a few days she'd die. Hearing Mr. Jinnai's explanation, Isamu panicked and asked if there was no medicine to cure his mother. He replied that there was a sulfur drug that was discovered in Germany, but it's so expensive that he can't buy it. Hearing that there was a drug that could cure his mother, Isamu was determined. Isamu immediately rushed to get money to buy the drug. Mr. Jinnai was not sure about it. The cheapest thing in Manchuria is the life of a human being. In Mukden, sulfur drug costs 200 yen, equivalent to $1.39 today. At that time, 200 yen was very expensive, equivalent to buying a human being. But the medicine seller offered Isamu an easy way to earn that money. His little brother was priced at 50 yen and his little sister at 100 yen because she was a girl. He explained further, eyeballs for eye diseases, stomach for problems with internal organs. And it said that steamed brain is good for everything. A child's body makes good medicine when you eat it. Isamu, of course, refused the offer. He was overwhelmed to get that much money. Suddenly he smelled a plant. In the disposal site of the volunteer army's farm. They ought to throw the compost and old soil there. But the smells are different. Isamu was increasingly curious about the smell. It's a very pleasantly sweet fragrance. When Isamu and his two younger siblings entered the disposal site, they saw a plant they had never seen before. His younger brother, who immediately wanted to eat the plant because it looked like a small melon, was immediately stopped by Isamu. If his younger brother ate the plant directly, he could die immediately. It turned out that the plant was an opium. Opium is a narcotic that's been widely used in Manchuria. It ruins the user's body, makes them addicted and eventually completely destroys them. The main ingredient comes from these opium poppies. Isamu began to suspect that this plant did not grow by itself, but someone planted this deadly plant. The air is thick with tension. Isamu sits stiffly on the floor. A faint creak is heard behind him. A shadowy figure enters silently behind him. In his hand, a heavy blunt weapon is raised high. Isamu's eyes go wide. A cold sweat beads down his face as he senses something behind him. He begins to turn his head slightly. The two younger siblings were very shocked. The person then approached Isamu. He drops a long wooden stick to the ground. It turned out that the person was Mr. Jinnai. His eyes blazed as he grabbed Isamu by the collar. Spittle flew from his mouth as he screamed, "That I have to kill you myself, Isamu." The children behind them screamed and pulled at the old man, shouting, "Let go of him. Stop it." Isamu lay on the ground, choking under the tight grip of Mr. Jinnai. In a weak, strained voice, he asked, "Why are you doing this?" Mr. Jinnai showed no hesitation. With a firm, flat tone, he replied, "You should know by now." He explained that in order to make money in a place like this, people had only two choices: sell their children or sell opium. Isamu struggled to break free, but Mr. Jinnai's grip was too strong. In his mind, Isamu realized he wouldn't be able to overpower the older man. Mr. Jinnai continued, saying he wouldn't let things end like this. He declared that he would make this place a success and that he wouldn't give anything to anyone. In behind of him, Tetsu stood motionless, holding something tightly in her hands. His eyes were wide open, his face full of tension and uncontrollable emotion. From behind, he had just hit Mr. Jinnai, who had previously strangled his brother. Not far from there, his younger brother was squatting beside Isamu, who was still lying weakly. Isamu could only groan softly, still in pain. Tetsu dropped the stone to the ground, his hands shaking. He looked at his brother and sister, then at Mr. Jinnai's body, which was no longer moving. Not a single word was spoken, but everything that happened felt very heavy for the children. Isamu had no choice but to bury him. Isamu and the children worked in silence, digging a hole deep in the woods. Saburo, tired and panting, asked, "Bro, I'm tired. How deep are we going to dig?" Isamu looked over and told him to take a break. Much deeper, he added, "We don't want stray dogs to sniff him out." The digging continued without further complaints. Tetsu stood off to the side, her face low, her hands trembling. "I did it," she whispered to herself. "I killed him, after all. I did it." Her voice was soft, but the guilt weighed heavily. As they lowered Mr. Jinnai's body into the ground, Isamu gave the others instructions. "He got infected by Mom and died from prostration," he said calmly. "Got it? That's what we'll say if anyone asks." Inside the simple and stuffy house, Isamu's mother lay weakly on the bed. Her body was covered in sweat and severe rashes, her breathing was heavy and restrained, occasionally interspersed with groans of pain. Nearby, Saburo was curled up on the floor, holding his empty stomach. "Brother," he muttered weakly, "I'm so hungry." Tetsu sat alone in the corner of the room, his knees pulled to his chest. Meanwhile, Isamu stood with a thick book in his hand. He opened page after page. That night, with slow but steady steps, Isamu left the house. He walked towards the field. Carefully, he held a ripe opium fruit. His hand gripped a small knife, and without hesitation, he began to scratch the surface of the fruit. A thick, clear liquid began to seep out of the cut wound. Isamu knew this was the beginning of a decision that he could not take back. Armed with the knowledge from the book he had read, Isamu began to practice what he had learned. In the fields, he cut open the opium poppies one by one and collected the thick white sap that flowed out into a container. Once inside the house, he began to process the sap carefully. He weighed, ground, and compacted the ingredients according to the instructions. Every movement was done with great care, as if he knew that the slightest mistake could be fatal. Finally, on a wooden board, a lump of raw opium was formed, the result of his own labor. Isamu had succeeded in making opium for the first time, not out of greed, but out of dire necessity and forced circumstances. Isamu stared at the dark mass in his palm. "So, this is opium," he murmured softly. The fruit of all his hard work and knowledge was now before him. He held it tightly, sniffing it carefully, making sure the texture and shape matched what he had learned. With determined steps, he wrapped the opium, storing it with the knowledge that this small object could be the beginning of a major change in their lives, either towards hope or destruction. To make money here, you had only two choices: sell your children or opium. Isamu finally made his way to the place. With calm steps, he entered a room guarded by muscular, tattooed men. The atmosphere immediately became tense. One of them glared at him and asked in a harsh tone, "Who are you, you bastard?" But Isamu stood still, unmoved. Isamu was determined. With full confidence, he offered the opium he had made himself. "Please," he said, holding out the small package, "will you buy this opium?" His face was full of sincerity. He no longer hesitates, because in his heart there is only one goal: to get money to save his mother. That determination is now the power that drives him to go further. Will Isamu succeed in selling opium? Will his mother recover? What about the fate of his two younger siblings? If you like this video, I will make a second chapter. Thank you for watching this video and don't forget to subscribe.